She stood in her own bathroom at 2 a.m., mascara running down her face, holding a pregnancy test and praying it would be negative. This was supposed to be her dream life, the perfect husband, the white picket fence, the solution to every broken piece of her childhood. But what Samantha didn't know was that in exactly 48 hours, she'd discover something that would flip her entire world upside down. Something that would make her realize she'd been living a complete lie. And no, this isn't what you think it is. Because what happened next, what she found hidden in Jerome's study, it wasn't an affair. It wasn't gambling. It wasn't drugs. It was something so much worse, so much more twisted. Something that would make her question everything she thought she knew about love, about marriage, about herself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this all started. Samantha Martinez grew up in Millfield, population 3,000, the kind of town where everybody knows everybody, where the church is the center of social life, and where being unmarried at 25 makes you the subject of concerned whispers at the grocery store. Her childhood, let's just say it wasn't exactly Leave It to Beaver material. Her mom worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, and her dad was physically there, but emotionally checked out. He'd come home, crack open a beer, plant himself in front of the TV, and act like Samantha was furniture. Not abusive, just absent. Like she didn't matter enough to even acknowledge. By the time she hit her teens, Samantha was desperate for attention, for validation, for someone, anyone, to tell her she was worth something. She dated the wrong guys, made the wrong choices, and by 22, she was working as a waitress at Mel's Diner, watching all her high school friends post engagement photos on Facebook while she served coffee to truckers and tried not to feel like a complete failure. That's when Jerome walked in. Jerome Patterson, 6 feet tall, charming smile, drove a clean pickup truck, and, here's the kicker, he was a deacon at First Baptist Church, the golden boy. The guy every mother in town wanted their daughter to marry. And for some reason, he noticed Samantha. Their first conversation happened over pie. Apple pie, to be exact. He ordered a slice, she brought it over, and instead of the usual thanks and ignored existence, he actually looked at her. Like, really looked at her. "You have beautiful eyes," he said. Simple, direct, no cheesy pickup line. Samantha nearly dropped the coffee pot. What followed was the most intense whirlwind romance of Samantha's life. Jerome didn't just date her, he pursued her. Flowers at work, surprise visits, long conversations about dreams and futures, and all the things Samantha had never dared to hope for. But here's the thing that hooked her completely. Jerome saw her pain. All those nights she'd cried herself to sleep feeling worthless, all those years of emotional neglect. Jerome saw right through her tough exterior and said the words she'd been dying to hear her entire life. "You deserve to be loved, Samantha, really loved. And I want to be the man who shows you what that looks like." Ladies, let me tell you something. When you've been emotionally starved your whole life and someone shows up offering you a feast, you don't ask questions about the ingredients. The whole town was buzzing. Did you hear? Jerome Patterson is dating that Martinez girl. At first, it wasn't exactly approving. Samantha could feel the stares at church, the whispered conversations that stopped when she walked by. Jerome was supposed to end up with someone like Sarah Beth Collins, the pastor's daughter, with the perfect family and the college degree. But Jerome didn't care. He'd wrap his arm around Samantha's waist during Sunday service and announce to anyone who'd listen, "This is my girl. Isn't she beautiful?" For the first time in her life, Samantha felt chosen, protected, worthy. 6 months in, Jerome took her to dinner at the fanciest restaurant within 50 miles. Right there, between the shrimp cocktail and the main course, he got down on one knee. "Samantha, you're everything I've ever wanted. Will you marry me?" She said yes before he even finished the question, and suddenly everything changed. The same people who'd been whispering about her were now congratulating her. "Oh, you're so lucky. Jerome is such a catch. This is going to fix everything in your life." Her own mother, who hadn't shown genuine interest in Samantha's life since she was 12, suddenly became the most supportive mom in the world. "I always knew you'd land a good man," she said. "Marriage will be so good for you, honey. It'll give you purpose." Everyone had opinions about what marriage would do for Samantha, how it would complete her, fix her, make her whole. No one, not one single person, ever asked what Samantha brought to the relationship, what her dreams were, what she wanted. But she was too high on love and validation to notice. The wedding was beautiful, small, but beautiful. Jerome looked handsome in his navy suit. Samantha felt like a princess in her mom's old dress, altered to fit perfectly. During the ceremony, when Jerome looked into her eyes and said, "I promise to love and cherish you," Samantha actually teared up. This was it. This was her happily ever after. The honeymoon was a long weekend at a bed and breakfast 2 towns over. Nothing fancy, but it felt like paradise to Samantha. Jerome was attentive, romantic, everything she dreamed of. But on the drive home, something shifted. They were talking about their new apartment. Nothing special, just a 2-bedroom place above the hardware store. And Samantha mentioned wanting to paint the bedroom a soft yellow. "Yellow?" Jerome laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "Honey, that's gonna look awful. We'll do beige. Much classier." It was such a small thing, so minor. But something about the way he said it, like her opinion didn't even register as worth considering, made Samantha's stomach twist. "But I really like yellow," she said quietly. Jerome reached over and patted her leg. "Trust me on this one, babe. I have better taste with this stuff." And that was it. Conversation over, decision made. The apartment got painted beige. Over the next few weeks, there were other small things. Jerome would suggest what she should wear to church. He'd reorganize her kitchen cabinets to be more efficient. He'd invite his friends over without asking her first, then get irritated if she seemed anything less than thrilled to host. "What's wrong with you lately?" he'd ask when she seemed quiet. "You should be happy. This is what you wanted, right? A husband who takes care of things." And the crazy part? Everyone around them agreed with him. When Samantha mentioned to her coworker Lisa that Jerome had thrown away her old coffee mug, the one with the chip that she'd had since college, Lisa just shrugged. "That's marriage, hon. Men like things neat and organized. At least he cares enough to notice." When her mother visited and saw that all of Samantha's books had been moved to the basement because Jerome said they cluttered up the living room, her mom actually seemed impressed. "It's so nice to see you two working as a team. Jerome has such good instincts about making a home." Working as a team. That's what everyone called it when Jerome made decisions and Samantha went along with them. But it didn't feel like teamwork to Samantha. It felt like disappearing. By month 3 of marriage, Samantha barely recognized herself. She'd stopped suggesting restaurants when they went out to eat. Jerome always knew better places anyway. She'd stopped buying clothes she liked. Jerome's taste was more sophisticated. She'd even stopped calling her friend Maya because Jerome said Maya was kind of dramatic and probably not the best influence.
The weird part? Jerome wasn't mean about any of it. He never yelled, never called her names. He was always so reasonable about everything. "Ani, I'm just trying to help you become the best version of yourself," he'd say, when she'd get quiet after he'd corrected something else about her choices. That's what husbands do. We help our wives grow. And everyone reinforced this message. At church, Pastor Williams would preach about wives submitting to their husband's wisdom. At family dinners, Jerome's mom would praise Samantha for being so adaptable and so good at letting Jerome lead. Even her own mother would say things like, "You're so lucky Jerome cares enough to guide you. Some men just let their wives make all kinds of mistakes." So Samantha started to believe maybe she was lucky. Maybe this was what love looked like. Maybe all those years of feeling worthless had damaged her judgment so badly that she needed someone else to make decisions for her. But then came the dinner incident. It was a Thursday night in October. Samantha had spent all afternoon making Jerome's favorite meal, pot roast with all the fixings. She'd even stopped by the bakery to get that expensive bread he liked. Jerome came home from work, looking stressed. Bad day at the insurance office, apparently. He sat down at the table, took one bite of the pot roast, and made a face. "This is really dry, Samantha. Did you follow the recipe?" She had. She'd followed it exactly. But instead of saying that, she heard herself apologizing. "I'm sorry, honey. Maybe I left it in too long. And the potatoes are under-seasoned." He pushed his plate away. "I'll just grab something on my way back to the office. I have to work late tonight anyway." He kissed her forehead, not mean, just dismissive, and left. Samantha sat there staring at a table full of food that had taken her 3 hours to prepare. Food that tasted perfectly fine. Food that any normal person would have been grateful for. And for the first time since the wedding, she let herself think the thought she'd been pushing down for months. This isn't normal. This isn't love. This isn't what marriage is supposed to feel like. But then the guilt crashed in. Who was she to complain? Jerome worked hard to provide for them. He was faithful, responsible, respected in the community. He wasn't abusive. He never hit her, never screamed at her, never cheated on her. So what was wrong with her that she couldn't just be grateful? The bathroom moment I mentioned at the beginning, it happened 3 weeks later. Samantha's period was late. Not super late, just late enough to make her nervous. So she bought a pregnancy test on her way home from work and took it that night after Jerome fell asleep. Negative. And instead of disappointment, instead of sadness about not being pregnant, she felt relief, pure, overwhelming relief. She sat on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m., still holding that test, and realized she was terrified of bringing a child into this marriage, terrified of watching Jerome dismiss and reshape a little person the way he'd been dismissing and reshaping her. That's when she started crying. Not pretty tears, ugly, body-shaking sobs. What kind of wife was relieved not to be pregnant? What kind of woman married a good man and still felt like she was suffocating? She must be broken. She must be damaged. She must be... "Samantha, what are you doing?" Jerome was standing in the doorway in his pajamas, looking concerned, but also annoyed, like her breakdown was an inconvenience. "I thought I might be pregnant," she whispered, "but I'm not." His face immediately softened. "Oh, honey, I know you're disappointed, but don't worry. We have plenty of time for babies once you're more settled into being a wife."
More settled into being a wife. Like being a wife was a skill she hadn't mastered yet. "Jerome," she said slowly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." Do you actually like me? I mean, do you like who I am?" He looked genuinely confused by the question. "What do you mean? Of course I love you." "That's not what I asked." There was a long pause. Too long. "Samantha, I married you because I saw your potential. I saw the amazing woman you could become with the right guidance. That's love. Seeing someone's best self and helping them reach it." And there it was. The truth she'd been afraid to face. Jerome didn't love her. He loved his project. He loved the idea of taking broken little Samantha Martinez and turning her into the perfect pastor's wife. She wasn't a person to him. She was a renovation. The next day, Jerome left for a weekend church retreat. Men's ministry, building stronger spiritual leaders, all that. For the first time in months, Samantha was alone in their apartment. Really alone. She wandered around like a tourist in her own life, noticing things, like how none of her stuff was visible anywhere, like how every decoration, every piece of furniture, every single choice reflected Jerome's taste perfectly. She couldn't even find evidence that she lived there. That's when she decided to go into Jerome's study, the one room she never entered because it was his space for important work. She wasn't snooping, exactly. She was just looking for herself, for any sign that her husband's life included room for who she actually was. His desk was perfectly organized, work papers in neat stacks, his Bible with color-coded tabs, a framed photo of them from their wedding day, her smiling widely, him looking proud and satisfied, like he'd just closed a successful business deal. And then she saw the notebook. It was leather-bound, expensive looking, the kind of journal you'd use for important thoughts. She almost didn't open it. Invading privacy felt wrong. But something made her flip to the first page. Project Samantha, month 1, was written at the top in Jerome's careful handwriting. Project Samantha. Her hands started shaking as she read. S is responding well to gentle correction. Successfully redirected her wardrobe choices without major resistance. Kitchen organization complete. Next phase, social circle adjustment. Maya is too independent-minded and will undermine progress. Need to create distance there. She flipped the page. Month 2. Excellent progress. S is questioning herself more, seeking guidance before making decisions, self-confidence appropriately lowered. Ready to begin phase 2, financial dependence and isolation from family support systems. Another page. Month 3. Minor setback with the pot roast incident. S showed signs of resentment. May need to Bingru's positive reinforcement while maintaining correction protocols. Long-term goal, complete submission achieved through systematic erosion of independent thought. Page after page, months of entries. Her entire marriage documented like a psychological experiment. But the worst part, the very last entry, dated just 2 days ago. S's pregnancy scare provided excellent opportunity to assess progress. Her relief at negative result indicates successful conditioning. She now sees herself as unfit for major life decisions, ready for final phase, pregnancy. A child will complete the dependency cycle and ensure permanent compliance, will discontinue protection next week. Samantha dropped the notebook like it was on fire. This wasn't marriage. This wasn't love. This was systematic psychological manipulation. This was a man who had identified a broken, desperate woman and decided to break her down completely for his own purposes. And the most terrifying part, it was working. She had been questioning herself more. She had been seeking his approval for everything. She had started to believe she was damaged and needed his guidance. But why? Why would someone do this? She kept reading, looking for answers, and found them in an earlier entry. Mother finally stopped asking when I'm getting married. The church board loves that I've settled down with a nice girl. Pastor Williams hinted about leadership opportunities opening up for mature married men. S provides perfect cover for advancement while requiring minimal actual emotional investment. Win-win. Cover. She was cover. Jerome wasn't a man who fell in love with a broken woman and wanted to fix her. Jerome was a man who needed a wife for his image and specifically chose someone vulnerable enough to mold into whatever would serve his purposes. He'd studied her, analyzed her weaknesses, crafted a whole strategy around making her dependent on him. And she'd been so starved for love that she'd walked right into it. Samantha sat in that study for 2 hours, reading and rereading those entries. Part of her wanted to pretend she'd never seen them. Part of her wanted to put the notebook back and continue living the lie, because at least it was comfortable. At least she knew what was expected of her. But a bigger part, a part that had been buried but never fully killed, was furious.
She thought about every time she'd apologize for having an opinion, every time she'd second-guessed her own judgment, every time she'd felt grateful that someone like Jerome would choose someone like her. She thought about that pregnancy test and the relief she'd felt and how she'd been ashamed of that relief. She thought about the woman she'd been before Jerome. Flawed, sure, but real, authentic. Someone who laughed too loud and loved yellow walls and kept coffee mugs with chips because they had stories. Where had that woman gone? But more importantly, could she get her back? That night, Samantha did something she hadn't done in months. She called Maya. "Girl, where have you been?" Maya said, and just hearing her friend's voice made Samantha start crying all over again. She told Maya everything. The notebook, the project, the systematic manipulation, all of it. "Holy shit," Maya whispered when she finished. "Samantha, this is abuse. This is psychological abuse. But he never hit me. He never yelled. He was always so reasonable about everything." Honey, abuse isn't just physical. What you're describing, that's emotional manipulation on a clinical level. This man studied you like a lab rat and then systematically broke down your sense of self. That's abuse. For the first time, Samantha had a word for what she'd been living through. And having a word for it changed everything. Jerome came home from his retreat on Sunday evening full of stories about spiritual growth and brotherhood and all the usual church retreat stuff. Samantha had spent the weekend planning. Not just what she was going to say, but what she was going to do. She'd opened her own bank account. She'd called her old boss at the diner about getting her job back. She'd even looked at apartments across town. "How was your weekend, honey? I hope you used the time to think about our conversation the other night, about babies." "Actually, I did think about it, and I realized something important." "Oh, what's that?" She took a deep breath. "I realized that I don't want to have children with someone who sees me as a project instead of a person." Jerome's face went very still. "What do you mean by that?"
I found your notebook, Jerome, the one where you documented your strategy for breaking me down. Project Samantha, remember? The color drained from his face, but he recovered quickly. That's the thing about manipulators. They're good at thinking on their feet. "Samantha, I think you misunderstood. I misunderstood complete submission achieved through systematic erosion of independent thought. I misunderstood pregnancy will complete the dependency cycle." He stared at her for a long moment, and then his whole demeanor changed. The concerned husband mask slipped away, and what was underneath was cold, calculating. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said quietly. "I know." "You do realize what you're throwing away here, right? You think you can do better than me? You think anyone else is going to want damaged goods?" 6 months ago, those words would have destroyed her, would have sent her crawling back, grateful for whatever scraps of affection he was willing to throw her way. But now she saw them for what they were, the last desperate tool in his manipulation toolkit. "You know what, Jerome? You're right. I am damaged goods. I'm a woman who grew up so desperate for love that I mistook control for caring. I'm someone who is so afraid of being alone that I let another person erase me, piece by piece." She stood up, looking down at this man she'd thought was her salvation. "But here's what you got wrong in all your careful planning. Damaged doesn't mean broken, and it sure as hell doesn't mean worthless." Jerome tried everything over the next 2 weeks. Tears, promises to change, threats, love bombing, the whole cycle. But Samantha was done. She moved out on a Tuesday morning while he was at work, leaving behind everything he'd chosen for their life together and taking only the things that were truly hers, which, it turned out, wasn't much. But it was enough. The divorce was messy. Jerome painted himself as the abandoned husband, the good Christian man whose wife left him for no reason. Some people believed him, but some people didn't, and those were the people worth keeping. Maya helped her move into a tiny studio apartment. Her mom was confused and disappointed, but she'd learned to deal with it. And Samantha? Samantha painted her walls yellow. But here's the thing that Jerome never saw coming. The thing that makes this story more than just another tale of a woman escaping a bad marriage. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Samantha was working at the diner again, slowly rebuilding her life, when a young woman came in. Early 20s, shy, nervous looking. She ordered coffee and pie, and when Samantha brought it over, the girl looked up with familiar eyes. "Are you Samantha Martinez?" "Used to be. It's just Samantha Garcia now." "Why?" "My name's Rebecca Collins. I think I need to tell you something about Jerome." Turns out, Jerome had moved on quickly after their divorce, found himself another broken bird to fix. Sarah Beth Collins' younger sister, actually. The pastor's younger daughter who'd struggled with depression and low self-esteem after dropping out of college. "He's been so wonderful," Rebecca said, but her voice was hollow. "Everyone says I'm so lucky, that he's going to help me become the woman God intended me to be. But what, honey? But I feel like I'm disappearing. Like every day there's less of me and more of what he wants me to be. And I found something in his car yesterday. A notebook with my name on it." Samantha's blood ran cold. What did it say? Project Rebecca, month 1. And that's when Samantha realized the truth. Jerome hadn't chosen her randomly. This was what he did. This was his pattern. Find vulnerable women, systematically break them down, use them for whatever he needed, and when they got too strong or too inconvenient, move on to the next victim. She wasn't his first project, and Rebecca wouldn't be his last. Unless someone stopped him. What happened next isn't what you'd expect from a story like this. Samantha didn't go to the police. Psychological manipulation like Jerome's isn't technically illegal. She didn't confront him publicly. Men like Jerome are too good at playing the victim. Instead, she did something smarter. She started a support group. Quietly, carefully. Women who'd been in controlling relationships, women who'd lost themselves in marriages that looked perfect from the outside. And slowly, word got around. Other women started coming forward. Women who dated Jerome before Samantha. Women who'd experienced similar things with other men in town. It turned out there was a whole network of women who'd been made to feel crazy for recognizing abuse that didn't leave bruises. Rebecca was the first one Samantha helped leave, but she wasn't the last. The group grew. They started meeting weekly, then twice a week. They created a phone tree for women in crisis. They learned to recognize the signs, to trust their instincts, to value their own worth. They painted their walls whatever colors they wanted. And Jerome? Jerome eventually left town. Turns out, predators don't like communities that know how to spot them. I know what you're probably thinking. This is supposed to be a story about marriage, right? About how marriage doesn't fix everything. But here's what I learned from Samantha's story. Marriage isn't the problem. Love isn't the problem. The problem is believing that another person can complete you. The problem is thinking that being chosen by someone else makes you worthy. The problem is confusing control with care, possession with protection. Real love doesn't try to fix you. Real love doesn't require you to become someone else. Real love sees you exactly as you are and says, yes, this person, this beautifully imperfect, completely real person. Samantha never remarried, but she didn't need to. She learned something more valuable than having a husband. She learned how to be her own whole person. And those yellow walls, they looked beautiful. The women in her support group would tell you the same thing. You can't love someone else fully until you love yourself completely.
And you can't be loved properly until you believe you deserve it. Marriage doesn't fix broken people. Only people can fix themselves. But when two whole, healthy people choose each other, that's when marriage becomes something beautiful, something worth having, something worth waiting for. If you know someone who needs to hear the story, share it with them. And if you needed to hear the story, well, maybe it's time to ask yourself some hard questions about the yellow walls in your own life. What colors have you been painting over? What parts of yourself have you been hiding? What would it look like to be completely, authentically you? Start there. Everything else will follow.